So, you guys just watched a video and read a little bit about Jane Elliott and her experiment with prejudice and racism. And we have to ask ourselves, like, why is this the case? Why do people act this way? And how can we prevent it? So, when it comes to the roots of prejudice, it really boils down to a couple of things. First thing is categorization. As humans, we like to simplify things by putting things into categories. This is natural. You have a baby and you give them, different color blocks and things like that. You're going to see them put them in groups, all the red blocks together, all the blue blocks together, maybe all the green blocks together. It just makes it easier. So we tend to do that sometimes with people. We'll put them in categories of, the us versus the them, and maybe like different cliques in school, different ages, different races. We just like to put things in categories. It just simplifies the world. And sometimes vivid cases pop out. Maybe something that happened on the news, something that stood out as like that's a something that is memorable and is a case that kind of sticks into your brain. An example of that is 9/11. You guys are probably way too young if I don't think you were even alive on September 11th, 2001. But the idea of, if you asked people in the 90s to draw a picture of a terrorist, they're more likely to draw a Russian because that is what was depicted in movies. That was kind of real life. And now, if you were to ask them to draw a picture of a terrorist, for the most part, people are going to be drawing pictures of very stereotypical answers based on vivid cases. A vivid case of 9/11 kind of fed into stereotypes. And, this circle of terrorism, I mean, there's lots of white Christian terrorists. I mean, the Unabomber was a white Christian terrorist. The bombing of Oklahoma City was a white Christian terrorist. But because, we got the us group and the then group, we're thinking that these vivid cases, that these two little circles, these Venn diagrams overlap, when that's not necessarily the case, because we like to categorize and say they're all these blocks are the same. And vivid cases sometimes feel like, yeah, all these cases are the same according to this vivid case. And we feel like the world is just, the world is fair. Good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. So if we see something happening bad to someone, we tend to feel like either they deserved it or they put themselves in that scenario. So what else did you think was going to happen? And a lot of times we blame the victim in those cases. We think, well, if they hadn't done that, then that wouldn't have happened, or they put themselves into that scenario, or what did you think was going to happen? So when it comes to the just world phenomenon, we think people kind of get what they deserve. And unfortunately, we see that a lot. Recently there's been, lots of shootings of Black men in America. And a lot of people think, well, first off, they categorize and think like maybe all those people are the same. Vivid cases stick out, whether it's Trayvon Martin or Breonna Taylor, or we think that, that sticks in our brain. And then we think the world is just, well, maybe they weren't doing something bad at that moment, but gosh, the police wouldn't just shoot someone for no reason. So we kind of feel like there has to be some sort of reason. And it kind of just feeds into our prejudice and our racism tendencies that we have. And we think, well, they must have been doing something wrong. I wasn't there, but you wouldn't just have, bad people or like good people have bad things happen to them. That's not okay. And so we tend to just rationalize it to ourselves, and it feeds into our prejudice. We're going to be talking about aggression later today. Well, actually, I think right now, if I looking at my calendar of what I wanted to cover today, right now, aggression. So any aggression is any physical or verbal act intended to destroy or hurt. So it's all about the intent. So, gossip is an act of aggression. You're intending to destroy or hurt someone. But if you have like two animals like fighting over like food, the intent is food, not the intent is not to hurt, even though that might be, a match to the death for animals. So when it comes to the biology of aggression, what's going on biologically? There's genetic influences. I mean, there are like testosterone would be an example of a genetic influence that is going to change your level of aggression. Same thing with just like your parents. If your parents are more aggressive people, maybe they go from 0 to 60 in anger and aggression, you're more likely to have aggressive tendencies. There's neural influences as well. Remember when we talked about the brain, there was the amygdala, which was part of the limbic system, and that had to deal with aggression and fear. There was a study that said people that they have more aggressive tendencies, they make their choices not using their frontal lobe with, which is where we have decision making, but with their amygdala, which is making decisions based on fear and aggression. And so, unfortunately, that can, if you might fly off the handle because the wrong part of your brain or just a different part of your brain is making those decisions. And biochemical influences like alcohol or steroids, things like that, that change your biochemistry and might lead you to more acts of aggression. So, I think I read this a few years ago that said like 8 out of 10, which is a hefty majority, 8 out of 10 domestic violence disputes where the police had to be called, 8 out of 10 people were drinking alcohol. So would they have led to this act of violence and this like fighting and aggression if they had not been drinking? I don't know, but there's some sort of biochemical influence for sure involved. Then there's this frustration aggressive principle. This is not biology. This is more psychology. The frustration aggressive principle is, I really like this definition, is basically we experience this when what we think is going to happen is not what the thing that actually happens. So I think that if I put $1 in the vending machine and press like B7, I'm gonna get a Coke. But then I press B7 and it jams or it gets stuck or like the food halfway drops and you're like, awesome. So then what happens? You get frustrated. You might pound your fist. You might try to shake the vending machine and basically it just doesn't work. So, I experience this sometimes when you're on like your Chromebook or your phone or my God, Schoology, when you're like, I think I'm going to press, the button and the website's going to pop up and it's like, sorry, it's down, it's closed. And just the act of just like, I'm going to lose my mind. You act of aggression because of the frustration. We talked about this before when we talked about learning. We talked about classical conditioning, operant conditioning. We also talked about observational learning. And if you remember, Albert Bandura and his Bobo doll of like, if we watch violent behavior, will we be more violent? Albert Bandura says yes. We talked about him with the Bobo doll, when the kids got to see the violent Bobo doll versus the kids that saw the sweet Bobo doll. They were more likely to be violent, those kids that saw the violence. And so does correlation mean causation in this case? It was an experiment. So AP psychology, psychologists, Albert Bandura, they all agree that yes, watching violence and violent behavior leads to more violence. Oh, I did not mean to press this. Oh no, stop it. Okay, I don't want my video to be taken off of YouTube because I'm playing someone else's video. That would be bad. Okay, I'm not going to press that, but if you want to look up on YouTube, there are lots of examples of Albert Bandura's Bobo doll study that you can go watch. And let's talk about aggression in social relationships and romantic relationships. So, sexual aggression. This is a very sensitive topic to talk about, but there is a myth. It's called the rape myth. There's a myth that secretly women like to have aggressive sex and enjoy rape. There's a famous James Bond scene with Sean Connery when he was James Bond, where he he rapes a girl, and in the middle of it, she just all of a sudden she's like fighting. She says no several times, which means no. And but he does not stop, and eventually she just swoons and gives in, and she's like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted the whole time. No, that's not how it works. When a girl says no or a boy says no, that means no. Anything past that can be considered as rape. So you have to ask for consent every time, no matter if you've been dating them forever or not. And we've talked about, when we talked about Albert Bandura and the Bobo doll, people used to think that watching aggression would just get these aggressive urges out, when really it actually feeds into it. And there's been many studies about pornography and how it does not help people just act out these urges like by watching it. That actually feeds into their urges. And so if they have sexual aggressive urges, or urges for things that are either illegal or something that they do not have consent for, watching it in porn does not actually release these urges, but it feeds them. Here is a disturbing picture of rapists reported, faced trial, and jailed. And then these two little guys down here are the falsely accused. So when people say, we just got out of the Me Too movement, and for a long time, people were saying, she's just saying this because she wants attention. There's no, okay, first off, look of all the rapists, yes, that's too many. But the chances of them falsely accusing are extremely low. If you look at all the cases that have been, of all the rapists that have been out there, and the ones that are actually compared to the falsely accused, it's better to err on the side of believing than disbelieving. And 1 out of 4 women, I don't have the statistics for men, but 1 out of 4 women are raped in their lifetime. That is 25%. 4 women. So, ladies, protect yourselves. Men, protect yourselves. I don't have the statistics for men, but it's not as high as women, but it's not something that, to not think that it doesn't happen. It does happen. You're more likely to know the person than not know the person. So it's not necessarily creeper in the bushes as you're going for a run. It's more like a family member, friend, an acquaintance, and someone that has some feeling of authority over you, and the grooming as well. So that is where we are ending today. We are going to be talking about conflict. That's kind of cut off. Conflict later, and the good things about relationships. We've been talking about bad things, aggression and prejudice and things like that. Later, we're going to be talking about the good things, love and altruism. So good things are yet to come. We just have to get through all the bad stuff first. Anyway, have a great day. Bye guys.